Every moral judgment you've ever made might be wrong, not slightly off, not biased, completely structurally false. That's not a fringe opinion. That's a serious philosophical position held by some of the sharpest minds in history. And if they're right, the entire foundation under your laws, your rights, your sense of justice is nothing but air. You feel it though, don't you? When a headline hits about a mass shooting, or a corporation poisoning a water supply, or a video of someone hurting a child goes viral, something inside you fires, not a thought, a reaction, deeper than logic, faster than language. It feels like you're touching something real, something solid, something that exists outside of you. But what if that feeling is a trick? What if your brain is just running very old software, and the software has no connection to anything out there in the world at all? That tension between the gut punch of moral certainty and the suspicion that it's all invented sits at the center of one of the oldest and most dangerous questions in philosophy. And it matters now more than ever. Because we live in an era where moral outrage fuels entire platforms, where cancel culture and human rights debates and climate justice arguments all rest on the assumption that some things are genuinely right and some things are genuinely wrong. If that assumption crumbles, what's left? Let's start with what your body already knows. Before you ever read a philosophy book, before you learned the word ethics, your nervous system was making moral calculations, and not just yours. Here's what's wild. Researchers showed 6-month-old babies a simple puppet show. One puppet helped another up a hill. A different puppet pushed it back down. Then they offered the babies both puppets. Nearly 3 out of 4 reached for the helper. These weren't kids who'd been taught right from wrong. They couldn't speak. They couldn't walk. But something in them already preferred kindness over cruelty. And it's not just humans. Capuchin monkeys in a lab were trained to hand over pebbles in exchange for food. When both monkeys got cucumber slices, everything was fine. But when one monkey watched the other get a grape, a much tastier reward, for the same pebble, the cucumber monkey lost it, threw the food back, refused to play. The deal was unfair, and the monkey knew it. So fairness shows up before language, before culture, before anyone teaches you what's right. That's a powerful clue. But here's the catch. Does any of that prove moral facts exist out in the world, like gravity or the speed of light? Or does it just prove our brains are wired a certain way? This is where the ground splits open. On one side stand the moral realists. They believe that when you say non-murder is wrong, you're describing something true about reality. Not just expressing a preference, not just repeating what your culture told you. You're reporting a fact, the same way you'd report that water boils at a certain temperature. The wrongness of murder is out there, built into the fabric of things waiting to be discovered. On the other side stand the anti-realists. They look at the same sentence, "Us murder is wrong," and see something completely different. To them, you're not stating a fact. You're expressing a feeling like saying with extra steps. Or you're announcing a social agreement like saying, "Arals, we drive on the right side of the road." It works because we all go along with it, not because the road has a preference. A survey of over 1,800 professional philosophers found the field deeply divided. Roughly a third called themselves realists. About a quarter leaned toward the emotional expression view. The rest scattered across a dozen other positions. The people whose literal job is to think about this can't agree. But wait. There's a version of anti-realism so extreme it makes the others look tame. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. In 1977, a philosopher named J.L. Mackie dropped a book with a title that said everything. Ethics, Inventing Right and Wrong. His argument was simple and devastating. Every single moral claim you've ever heard is false. Not some of them, all of them. Murder is wrong is false. Kindness is good is false. Torturing children for fun is evil is false. Not because murder is fine or torture is acceptable, but because the sentence is trying to point at something, an objective moral property out in the world that simply doesn't exist. It's like saying Sass the unicorn in my backyard is white. The grammar works. The sentence makes sense, but there's no unicorn, so the claim fails. Mackie called this the min-queerness argument. Moral properties, if they existed, would be unlike anything else in the universe. They wouldn't be physical. You can't weigh goodness. You can't measure evil with a thermometer. They'd have to be these strange, non-natural things that somehow force you to act a certain way when you perceive them. Nothing else in reality works like that. So why would we believe morality does? Now sit with that for a second. If Mackie is right, then every time a courtroom says a guilty, every time the United Nations declares a human right, every time you tell your kid that hitting is wrong, you're all taking part in a system built on statements that are technically, structurally false. The system might still work. People might still cooperate. But the foundation is hollow. Here's where it gets stranger still. Over a century before Mackie, a philosopher named G.E. Moore noticed something about the word "e-good" that nobody could escape. You can try to define that good any way you like. Good means pleasure. Good means survival. Good means what evolution favors. But for every single definition, Moore pointed out, you can always ask one more question. Okay, but is that really good? If good just meant pleasure, that question would be meaningless, like asking, "Akong, is a bachelor really unmarried?" But the question always feels open. It always feels like it's pointing at something beyond the definition. Moore argued this means crafted good can't be reduced to any natural property. It's its own thing, indefinable, irreducible. And yet, and this is the twist, Moore was actually a realist. He thought this proved moral facts exist. They're just not the kind of facts you can pin down with a dictionary. So his argument lands differently depending on which side you're standing on. Realists use it to say goodness is real but mysterious. Anti-realists use it to say goodness is mysterious because it's not real at all. But philosophy doesn't happen in a vacuum. Let's zoom out and look at the planet. If morality were purely invented, purely cultural, you'd expect wild variation. And there is variation. Attitudes toward marriage, diet, gender roles, punishment, all of these differ enormously across societies. But beneath that variation, something stubborn persists. Research across nearly 200 documented cultures found that almost all of them share a taboo against incest. That's near total agreement among groups that never contacted each other, separated by oceans and thousands of years. So here's the puzzle. If morality is invented, why do so many cultures independently invent the same rule? The obvious answer is biology. Inbreeding produces harmful genetic outcomes. Groups that avoided it survived. The taboo is evolution's fingerprint, not evidence of a cosmic moral law. But does that settle it? Not quite, because the question isn't whether we can explain the taboo. The question is what the taboo points to. Does it point to a real moral fact, one that evolution helped us detect? Or is it just a useful instinct that happens to feel like a fact? This is exactly where the debate gets stuck, and where something fascinating happens. Take a group of committed moral relativists, people who genuinely believe morality is just cultural agreement, nothing more. Ask them about dietary customs or marriage traditions and they'll shrug. Different strokes for different folks. But then ask them about genocide. Ask them about child abuse. Something changes. In one study, the vast majority of self-described relativists rated genocide as absolutely unacceptable. Not unacceptable in my culture. Absolutely. The very people who deny moral absolutes suddenly reach for one when the stakes get high enough. What's happening there? You could say they're being inconsistent. And maybe they are. But maybe they're revealing something deeper. A line that runs beneath all the cultural noise. A reaction so hardwired it overrides any theory they hold about how morality works. Their philosophy says, "Is no absolutes d'acro." Their nervous system says, "Es this far and no further." And this isn't just a philosophical game. The practical stakes are enormous. Think about what holds a legal system together. When a judge sentences someone for a crime, that sentence carries weight because it rests on the assumption that the law reflects something morally grounded. Research among legal scholars shows that roughly 2/3 rely on objective moral reasoning when making decisions. They're not just applying rules. They're appealing to a sense that some things are genuinely unjust. But if moral anti-realists are right, if every moral claim is technically false or merely a social agreement, then the entire legal structure is a house of cards held together by collective pretense. Rights become permissions that the majority grants and the majority can revoke. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights becomes not a discovery of what humans deserve, but a document reflecting what mid-20th century diplomats happened to agree on. Change the diplomats, change the rights. Now here's the nuance that complicates both sides, and this is crucial. Moral realism has a problem it can't quite solve. If moral facts exist, why can't we detect them the way we detect other facts? We have instruments for magnetic fields, for radiation, for sound waves. There's no moral fact detector. You can't run an experiment that returns egg murder is wrong, the way a thermometer returns a temperature. Realists say moral facts are known through reason, through intuition, through careful reflection. But anti-realists fire back. That's exactly what you'd say if the facts weren't really there and you were just rationalizing your feelings. Meanwhile, anti-realism has its own crack. If morality is truly invented, then moral progress makes no sense. We don't say slavery was wrong for its time, but right for ours. We say the people who practiced it were making a mistake. We say they failed to see a truth that was already there. That language, the language of moral error and moral discovery, runs through everything we say and think. Anti-realists have to explain away that entire way of speaking as a kind of persistent illusion. And maybe it is. But it's an illusion that seems to serve a deep purpose. Here's what no one on either side can escape. Whether or not moral facts exist worst out there, human beings behave as if they do. We build institutions around them. We sacrifice for them. We go to war over them. And when someone violates what we sense as a moral boundary, something in us doesn't just disagree. It revolts. Brain imaging studies found that the patterns your brain makes during moral judgments are distinct and consistent enough across people that a computer could tell whether someone was reacting to a moral statement or a non-moral one with striking accuracy. Your brain doesn't process calf murder is wrong, the same way it processes the sky is blue. It lights up differently. It pulls in emotional centers, reasoning centers, and social thinking areas all at once. Whatever morality is, it's not casual. It recruits your entire mind. So where does that leave us? Not with a clean answer. That's the honest truth. The realist says you're detecting something real. The anti-realist says you're experiencing a very convincing illusion. The error theorist says every moral sentence you've ever spoken is false. The baby reaching for the kind puppet doesn't care about any of these positions. It just reaches. If this question got under your skin, if you're not quite sure where you land, that's the sign of real thinking happening. Drop your position in the comments. Tell me which side pulls you harder and why. And if you want to go deeper into how philosophy shapes the way we actually live, the channel has a lot more waiting for you. You started this with a gut feeling that some things are just wrong. You still have that feeling. But now you know that the ground underneath it might be stone or it might be air. And the hand reaching for the kind puppet doesn't check which one it is before it reaches.